Welcome to another episode of Community Chat. My name is Kevin Tocci, and I will be your host for this segment and a series of segments that we are doing. As you know, it is that time of year for town elections. As you know, the town election coming up on April 25th. I believe that the polling hours are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Again, it's Saturday at the Beaverbrook Elementary School. If you're not sure as to where to vote, or as to what precinct you're in, your voting status, anything like that, easy enough to stop by Town Hall and visit Leanne and Barbara, or you can call them and find out. They'll give you all the information that you need, or you can also visit the town website. Today, we are going to be speaking with one of the candidates for school committee up for re-election. We have Melanie Whitney is our guest. Welcome back, Melanie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I say welcome back because Melanie, when she first ran, came in 3 years ago and did a show and was successful. Talk to us about, for folks who don't know you, we can't think that everybody knows who you are, got a lot of new folks to the district. Tell a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So personally, moved to Abington in 2008. So been here for nearly 20 years at this point. Raising two children in Abington. My daughter is in 8th grade, my son's in 5th. My daughter will be attending Abington High next year, so that'll be my first experience with Abington High as someone who is my child. I have been involved in schools for as long as my children have been alive. My son wasn't even born when we went into the building this building. And I was a part of that committee, the ABC group, to help build this beautiful new facility, which I guess is not so new today. So I've been very passionate about schools for a long time, even before my children were school age. I'm a candidate for re-election. I don't think my work with the committee is done yet. There is a challenging few years ahead of us, and I think that my experience and what I've learned over the last 3 years will continue to help our schools improve and our community come together.
Yeah, unknowingly, you actually answered my next question. That is, you seek a re-election. What motivated you? It seems as though you see this unfinished work. What is some of that unfinished work that you see that you'd like to tackle as part of the committee?
So to be quite honest, coming in with, I am not an educator. In my personal life and my paid life, I am an accountant. So I've been in public accounting. I currently am controller for a startup company. I manage money and budgets pretty much all day, every day for businesses. Coming into school committee, I thought that I was going to be able to make a greater impact quickly, knowing that I have a financial background. I thought that, I'm sure I can find more money and save more money and things like that. It took a long time to get up to speed. I didn't know how the government worked. I didn't have as intimate knowledge as I do today about how the schools work. So a lot of my first 3 years was spent learning and making small impacts. And I think now with this second term, I'm able to utilize those experiences to really drive home additional impact.
Okay. What do you feel are going to be the biggest challenges that the schools district is currently facing and could be facing in the next couple of years?
Budget. I think we've all in town heard a lot about the budget. The school is a large percentage of the town's budget. So that is something that we need to continue to focus on. Doing more with less, quote unquote, living within your means. Those are all going to be things that we need to prioritize. We hear the taxpayers. We hear people on fixed incomes saying that they don't want to spend additional funds. That is always going to be a priority, certainly in the next 3 years. Additionally, you see changes in education and changes in what serves students best post-graduation. So going into the working world or into college after graduation now looks different than it did when I left high school. And we need to ensure that our educational programming, all the way from pre-K up to high school, prepares students for that next step in life and creates lifelong learners. So that is something that we can't take our foot off the pedal there, even with budget constraints. You need to continue to serve our students the best way we can and balance what families are saying, what they need from the schools, and from additional youth resources.
When we talk about providing a high quality education, what do you think that specifically means to you and to the residents of Abington?
It means different things to different people. So based on research feedback, not just to me personally, but what it means to the greater community, I would say, is students who can be constructive members of society, have critical thinking, can have problem-solving skills, resiliency, not necessarily that they can do quick math in their head, but how they can use resources. AI is a big topic in everything right now. Certainly is in my working world on how I can leverage AI. A little different in education, because you don't want students to utilize AI to circumvent the learning process, but you do need to utilize AI to enhance the learning process. So a high quality education is different now than it was 20 years ago. It's not just an MCAS score, it's not an SAT score, it's not what your GPA is. It is how you are able to approach postgraduate life.
Okay. How do you measure whether the district is succeeding academically in preparing students for the future?
I think engagement is really big, and it's hard to measure what engagement looks like. So I think you have to look at a combination of the students who continue to stay in Abington and are able to succeed in their next step, whether that's going into the service, going into work, going to college, making sure that they're prepared for that next step and feel confident in the next step. But then when you get to the lower grades, it's making sure that students are working with one another well. They can go out onto a playground and solve problems together. Making sure that students are able to live a fulfilling life outside of these four walls based on the skills that they develop. Because school for the younger students, that's their job. This is what they do all day, every day. Not all day, every day, but for core hours during the day is where core learning happens. So I think measuring just on test scores is one piece of the puzzle, not just on like the MCAS, but on the things that are done like iReady at the elementary level. But I think the bigger piece is how kids interact with the community and one another.
You'd be able to answer this probably being a parent and having two children in the school district. Do you think there are any gaps in student achievement or opportunities, especially knowing that our children had to deal with COVID and knowing that there was a little bit of not a drop off as to what they were receiving, but it was a different type of learning environment for a year and a half to 2 years? Absolutely,
and I think that environment was seen certainly throughout the Commonwealth, but throughout the world at the global scale. Our students' rigor declined after the expectations changed. Rigor declined after COVID. There were focuses on mental health, on getting kids back into the school, getting them back into a routine. Time needed to be focused there to get students to sit in their seat for that period of time. We need to continue to enhance that rigor and set those clear expectations within the school day so that students understand what life is like, because life is a series of meeting people's expectations. And I think that is something we need to continue to enhance with our students. I think academically, reading at the elementary level is behind. Abington's not alone in that adventure, but it is something we need to address because reading is something that you need in order to learn. Learning to read and then reading to learn are, that's a tipping point for students, and we're seeing that at an older age now than we were pre-COVID.
Okay. Let's talk about school districts everywhere are right now dealing with tight budgets. Abington is no exception. I believe that Dr. Michelle and Dr. Pasta and their team have done a great job in illustrating the shortfall, how big it's going to become the town meeting and the special election for folks to go out and vote. How would you describe Abington's current financial situation?
It's not great. Looking at the town more globally, I know every district is struggling right now. I think every district in Abington and outside of Abington, and honestly private industry as well, is trying to do more with less. The cost of living is challenging. I understand, I moved to Abington because it was affordable. That's how I found myself here. I was not born here. And I don't want to see our town no longer be affordable to folks. But we are spending right now for the schools is well below the state. Our spending per student in district is below our peers. We're below the median. There's not much left to cut. When you don't have the excess because you are already below average in your area, if you're asked to decrease services, you cut into minimum services. So we are in a position right now, and capital improvements aside, just the operating budget, trust me, I have gone through every single line item. I've been a part of the financial subcommittee twice in my 3 years. I approve every biweekly warrant. I know what's going on through the schools, and we are in a tough situation. So
let's talk about principles that may guide you, especially when it's to decide programs or services to preserve versus cut. How tough is that for you as somebody who's sitting and you're listening to presentations and what decisions to make or help the superintendent and her team decide? Talk to me about that.
So in making those decisions, we have to put on the student hat. What is best for our students? And Peter Schaefer had always led with those discussions as well. What's in the best interest of the students? We continue to do that as a committee and certainly a central office. I think we need to think about our educators as our employees and what's best for them. We need to think about our families and what they're looking for. And we need to think about our taxpayers. But first and foremost, we need to think about the students and the programming that's going to impact the least number of students, the least most, if that's a word. We can't lose sight of populations of students who haven't been funded in the last few years. So for example, we have certain AP courses. We have fewer than some of our other surrounding districts because we can't put money toward a class that's going to run with 8 children. So that is something that was cut in the past at the high school level. So I think doing what's best for the most students is very important, and working together, both in terms of the schools working together as well as the broader community working with the schools.
Do you feel there's any areas that the district could find efficiencies without impacting students? Is there ways for them to maybe reorganize without having to make cuts to programs or services?
We've explored a lot of that. We have explored whether it makes sense to have busing for middle and high at the same time. Can we save money if we did one bus run for 5 through 12? I don't really want my 5th grader with a 12th grader on the bus, but would that make sense? Financially, that didn't help. We've explored a lot of those different options. Are there more to explore? Absolutely. And we do have to start flipping over all the rocks to understand what else we can do to save money. I do feel confident we've done a lot of that exploration. I think having Dr. Michelle step into the superintendent role and having Ms. Gainey step into the business manager role, transition in those roles has helped because they've asked a lot of questions. Same thing with new school committee members. They ask a lot of questions, and I think that's very helpful. We will continue, I think, regardless of the financial position that the town is in, that is just good government and good policy to go through the budget and make sure that we're being as efficient as possible.
Let's talk user fees. This topic is usually a hot button issue. What are your stances when it comes to fees, whether it's for athletics or other extracurricular activities?
We had a lot of dialogue about this during the original budget discussions back in December, January timeframe, to make sure that we are charging user fees consistent with our peer schools around us. We don't want to be charging the most. We don't want to be charging the least. We also have to keep in mind that our user fees, when you talk about athletics and busing, it's like $220,000 of the whole budget. It's not big. So we could raise it 10%. That's going to give us $22,000. It is not giving us an employee. But if there's an opportunity to raise incrementally, we can. We have to be very cautious to ensure that the ramifications of raising those fees do not impact students' ability to participate. A family who can afford to pay more, then that's wonderful. They could also just make a donation to PTOs and things like that. If you put bus fees so high, then you're just going to have even more traffic on Glenowitz. If you put athletic fees so high or reduce the caps or reduce the family maximums, then you have students who can't participate in athletics. We already see it on the youth side. Youth sports are expensive. You see students unable to participate and get into a sport because of cost. We live in a community where we do not have pure affluence, and we need to ensure that kids get to participate. So it's a balance.
I was going to ask you if you thought that maybe if the fees create somewhat of a barrier for some students. I think you kind of illustrated that.
Absolutely.
It does. Well, how should the district try to address that?
So the good news is that the state has put through, and I don't know all the details here, but I know Dr. Michelle does, the state has a program where if you fill out the online form, a lot of these fees are waived. If you think about like the old free school lunch type program, that now expands to a whole lot more, including busing and athletic fees. So reminding folks that they should utilize that if they need financial support. Sometimes people are too proud and they do not want to fill out that form, thus their student is unable to participate. So I want to be at the middle of the road for fees. I want to always, every single year, we need to compare our fees to our neighboring districts and understand how we're different and make sure that we're okay with those changes. I do think we're probably going to see a slight increase, but it's not going to make up an FTE, for example.
Okay. Let's talk about investing in programs. Looking ahead, what types of programs or initiatives do you think the district should be investing in? I know right now it's tough financial times to invest, but if there's anything that you feel that it should be looked at as better financial times become more available, what would you like to see them invest in?
Yeah, so I think that last point is extremely important, is right now we can't add programming. But if we were to get a windfall or if a grant became available, grants are a little tricky because they're generally finite in time, but if a grant became available or funds became available, language, we could expand quite a bit. Abington doesn't start their language program until 7th grade. And if the override does not pass, that's going to take a hit, languages. I have friends whose kids have choice of 3 languages in kindergarten. They go to public school. In the state of Massachusetts, language is all over the map. Our students don't have the same opportunity that other kids do. Same thing with the arts. And then at the middle and high school, different elective options. We do have STEAM in Abington. Again, that's something that'll be impacted if the override does not pass, but those types of options to engage students who don't necessarily thrive in a textbook memorization exam environment, but want to continuously learn something with their hands or with their creative minds. Those are the types of programs that Abington does not have that other communities do, and I would love to see get augmented.
What do you feel are the top languages that are a must? I think Spanish is probably one of them. What else do you think that should be a language that communities, and I'm just saying this is a blanket, not just Abington, should invest in?
So Mandarin is popular in the public schools, and French is still an option. I think it would be interesting because we do have a large percentage of our students who speak Portuguese to add Portuguese as an option. But I think I'm getting greedy at this point offering 4 languages.
Okay.
I'll take 2, and I'll take adding that at maybe the 5th grade level.
Okay. Are there specific academic, technical, or mental health supports you believe deserve more focus?
Depends on the student age that you're looking at. So if I look at a 7 to 12 option, students are very interested in technical. So engineering, architecture, computer programming, and computer sciences. Those are things that students are very interested in, and because they have the baseline knowledge of elementary, they can explore those areas and gain a lot and understand what they want to do post-graduation. I would love to see, and again, this is greedy, this isn't happening in the next 3 years, but I would also love to see things like small automotive, and like I had wood shop and metal shop and cooking and sewing. I had all those options growing up. Most public schools don't. I'd love to see that happen. Okay. On the early elementary level, I would love to see the mental health piece. I don't love the term, but learning to work with one another, collaboration, free play, those are all things that students develop a lot of their learning skills through not just math, science, and English, but through project-based collaborative learning. And I think that foundation serves them very well going forward, not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom.
Okay. Let's talk about communication. Communication between schools and families can make or break trust. How do you assess the district's current communication efforts?
Communication is one of the 4 items on the strategic priority list. So it has been a focus of certainly the last 2 years since we did the strategic planning. We have improved quite a bit. I think more people are more informed than they were before. Can we improve? Certainly. I think social media is an area we are lacking. There's a lot of gray area in social media with students, but I think we could probably improve in that area. I do think transparency and communication, the central office is always open to questions, and I think we do a fantastic job at being approachable. I don't know if everyone in town feels that way, and I'm not entirely sure why, and I would love to understand that further.
Okay. How do you ensure transparency in decision making, especially when it comes this time of year, when it comes to budget or policy issues?
Mm-hmm. So our school committee meetings have a lot of information. We talk about a lot of issues. The finance committee does a lot of work and tries to present that at the school committee. If questions arise, the best thing that people should do is go directly to Dr. Michella in central office. School committee is certainly a resource. Not everything is going to be every topic and every line item of the budget. It's going to be an open meeting, but all of it is available to be discussed. Ask a question in an open meeting, ask a question in an email. You should get a response. And if you do not feel comfortable with that response, you should let your school committee know, because that is our job.
Okay. How do you incorporate any feedback that you receive, whether it's from parents, maybe students, teachers, in your decision making? Yeah,
I mean, every piece of feedback is valuable and important. Every question and piece of feedback is something that needs to be explored. So it weighs on me. You know, my personal experience, I have 2 children and 3 nieces and nephews in this district. That is not a big population of the 2,100 students we serve. So the more people I hear from, the better decisions that we can make.
Okay. Let's talk about re-elected. You're on your way to being re-elected. What are some of your top priorities for the next term? Some of the things that you want to kind of tackle as a part of the committee?
Not dissimilar from the first time I ran. You know, my focus is always on community. I want to see the town come together more for our youth. And I want to break down barriers between this department and that department. And we as a community are all a part of these students' experience. How do we in the school hours utilize other people within the community, whether that's residents of the community or employers in the community? How do we work together? That's always going to be an area of focus, and even in the schools. So, for example, you know, speaking with health educators and with English educators, how do you focus on a health topic within English for an essay, and how can our departments work together better, either within the same building or even within different buildings? we've worked in that area. There's continued work that needs to be done, both to save money and to give everyone a greater experience. So that's a big focus. And then prioritizing, focusing always back on our strategic plan is where our decisions need to be prioritized. So those are my 2 areas of focus.
Okay. We're at that point where I kind of give you an open-ended question. Is there anything that we haven't touched upon, but you want to take a moment to talk about? Or maybe there's something that we did touch upon, but maybe you might, something came to you after we had discussed it and you might want to follow up or reemphasize.
I would love people to engage with school committee and with central office. Melanie Whitney 3@gmail.com. Email me, Melanie Whitney @abingtonps.com. .org. Please reach out, share feedback. The other piece that I think it's important, because I think your broadcasts reach a larger population than our school committee broadcasts. The capital plan for the school is an important topic, and I know you spoke with the select board candidates about it. This is not something that's new. This is something we've been talking about since I was in the seat 3 years ago. Our aging elementary schools need to be addressed, and it's a call it 7-year process between when we make a decision as a town to explore and when we can open up. So the decisions that we make now won't impact our students for 7 years. So we need to think about our capital plan for the schools as well. It's something we've talked with the town about every year. But I think the taxpayers deserve that understanding, because if we, for example, need to replace the Woodsdale roof or need to replace the heating system at the Beaverbrook, there's one line on the capital plan this year for that. But the larger scale refurbishment of that HVAC system is measured in millions. 2023, it was $5 to $9 million is that project. I'd rather not spend that money to tear down that building in 5 to 10 years. So I think we as a town need to address the long-term capital program for the schools and for the town at large. So just an area to keep people thinking about and talking about. Not going to be a popular thought to talk about right now, but it is something that we cannot just ignore.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us
you.
here and talking about your campaign, and you're looking forward to the next 3 years. We want to thank you for tuning in to a program like Community Chat. The idea is to make you a better informed voter when you make that decision on April 25th. It's a Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Beaverbrook Elementary School. If you are unaware as to your voting status, anything like that, you want to stop by Town Hall, call Town Hall, speak to Leanne or Barbara, and they will happily give you any information that you need. Until our next conversation, have yourself a great day.